Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our work session. Dr. Watts, would you begin our work session on capital projects and facilities?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, President Daniels, members of the board, Ms. Antello, support staff. We are so glad to be here for our work session to provide information for our board and certainly our community. At this time, I would like to call Chief School Operations Academic Support Officer, Israel Vela, to begin our presentations for this evening. Israel, floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Watts. President Daniels, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Santello, and colleagues here tonight. Excited to be with you the next couple hours as School Operations and Academic Support have a couple of updates for you. The first is, Dr. Watts mentioned, we have our Safety Services update, which will be led by our Executive Director for Student and Family Support Services, Mr. Randy Heath. And following that, we have our facilities and capital planning updates, in which we'll be joined by Assistant Director Gordon Cook and also Director of Capital Planning, Mr. Dave Buzzard. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Randy. Randy, you are muted.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to, let's see, get this PowerPoint up and started. Let's see. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, are you seeing it? Okay, great. Okay, so thank you, President Daniels, Dr. Watts, members of the board, Ms. Santello. We are very glad to be with you this evening to present on our safety services program. With us today, we have some guests. We have Police Chief McCurdy from Covington and Commander Grove from the Kent Police Department, as well as Mr. Tim Kovich, who is our Safety Services Assistant Director. All right. So we want to talk about the components of school safety, because school safety is actually a pretty complex thing to make it come together. And we came up with this visual to kind of show that there's a lot of different components that lead to school safety. The first of which is being in a safe and healthy community. We are part of a larger community that we live in, and the school district is a microcosm of those communities. And so anything we can do to help contribute to a safe and healthy community helps keep schools safe. We also have a real coordinated social emotional supports that we've talked about in other presentations with the board around our multi-tiered systems of support, our social emotional learning that we're teaching, all the different partnerships we have with our community-based organizations, all lead to these strong supports. We also, have a proactive and comprehensive safety planning that is a big part of keeping schools safe. But tonight we're really going to concentrate on one of these aspects, which is this whole safety services department in Kent School District. So we are happy to come back and present on any of these others at another time, but we are going to concentrate on safety services tonight. So when we're talking about safety services, there are 4 components of that as well. We have our safety officers that are out there that are hired by the Kent School District and are trained and work day in and day out in our secondary schools and in patrol roles around the district. We also have a very robust camera and radio system, which we thank you for helping to provide, because we know that we brought budget items to you recently around those two items right there. So that is a piece of what is going on. But some other 2 pieces that we really want to concentrate on tonight are our strong collaborative law enforcement relationship that we have with the 3 jurisdictions which serve Kent School District. And then specifically some of our school resource officers who work in our schools, and really highlighting some of the new legislation that are around our school resource officers. So let's start with our strong collaborative law enforcement relationship and what this provides to us. It provides access, coordinated communications, coordinated care for students, and mutually beneficial training opportunities. So let's talk about what that means a little bit. So when we are talking about hold on a second, I'm sorry. My notes just went away on me right there. Hold on a second. Okay, sorry. So when we're talking about access, it talks about knowing who to talk to, going back and forth, and that goes on both sides. So an example of that would be occasionally, especially in this day and age, social media has become a big part of our students' lives. And so oftentimes things will show up on social media, maybe a threat proposed or something that was going to happen at one of our schools. Now, what usually happens with those social media threats, it would be nice if it happened during the school day, so we had all of our personnel around and ready to respond right away. But as we often find that this happens after hours, it happens in the afternoon, in the evenings, and oftentimes we can't wait around to try to see what's going on. And so sometimes law enforcement are the ones that discover these social media threats. Other times it is school personnel that discover these, but whoever finds them and discovers them, we know exactly who to call and get in contact with, even after hours, to try to coordinate, okay, is this a viable threat? Is this something that we need to address right away? Is it something we can wait till the next day when the school starts? If it's determined that, no, we really need to try to address this evening, we coordinate. Is there something we can do this evening with somebody going to someone's home? Is it something that we can address in the morning before they get on the school bus? But really coordinating and having that. And if you didn't have the right people knowing who to call, you could spend a whole lot of time going through systems of calling 911, trying to get to a dispatcher who might or might not know who to call. And this is just an example of some access that having these strong law enforcement relationships has. Another one is around coordinated communications. What might surprise some people is that the majority of the times that our schools go into lockdown, it is not because that there is a threat that is active on our campus. We head into modified lockdown at times because we've been in coordinated communication with our law enforcement partners and understand that there may be a criminal activity that is going on near a school, that we want to just make sure that we're keeping kids safe by keeping them inside and not necessarily having them go out to recess. But it really happens when kids are coming to school and leaving school. If a criminal activity is happening right around a school, right at dismissal time, there needs to be a lot of communication that happens between our safety services and law enforcement to try to understand, okay, is it safe for our kids to exit the building? Is it safe for them to walk this certain route? Do we need to move our buses to a different route in order to avoid this area? And this coordinated communication is a big piece of keeping kids safe and not being getting close to these dangerous situations. The coordinated care for students and family. An example of that that we recently had during remote learning was a situation in which one of our students indicated to a friend that they possibly were suicidal and looking to harm themselves. And the friend obviously was concerned, knew the kid's name, didn't know where they lived. So the friend did what was responsible of them. They called police and were like, my friend's saying that they're going to kill themselves, and so I need to, tell somebody. Well, the police had a name, but they didn't necessarily have a location of where the student was. We were in remote learning, and so we were able to immediately coordinate that care with our safety services. We were able to find the location of the house. Police were able to come and intervene in a situation to help keep kids safe. And that's just one example that recently happened in which that coordinated care helped keep kids safe. Another example that we have regarding that is on the other side, which is sometimes when our police officers are working in our schools and they start to work with especially some of our special needs students who have some extreme needs, like an autistic student that displays behaviors in a certain way, there are strategies that are developed at the school with the school teams on how to address some of those behaviors. And some of our police officers have used those same strategies when these students are out in the community outside of school hours. And that helps keep the community safe, and it helps keep those students safe when police officers who know these students and know what the plan is to address some of these behaviors are able to encounter them in our community as well. And that's another example of coordinated care for students and family. And then we have a whole ton of mutually beneficial training opportunities that happen. We for years have invested a lot of training in our school resource officers, much more than other districts, to the point that we have an academy that happens every summer. Our school resource officers have come and trained along our school resource officers for years. They provided some of the training for our for our safety staff. It's been a great, a beneficial relationship. And not to speak of the other ones around, like the safety planning and doing drills together, so that, if there is an active shooter situation, for example, that police know, how they can rely on our safety staff, and how our safety staff know what the police are going to do in situations like that. And we hope that we never have a situation like that, but we feel better knowing that we've trained together for that situation, so we can be more confident going in. So these are just some examples of a strong coordinated approach. I don't know, I'm going to open it up if any of the other people that are presenting here have anything they want to add to the examples that we gave.
I'd like to say one thing. When we talk about all these categories, the access, coordinated communication, coordinated care, and the training, we're talking about highly specialized skills and abilities and equipment that's used in the schools by school staff and officers as well. And by having people who have that relationship with the other professionals on the other side of it, teachers and staff with the officers and back and forth, when we do have these events that are more challenging, then we're much more likely to have a good outcome, because we've practiced it, we've communicated, and we know where everybody else is going to come from. So I think these relationships being built in advance are huge.
Great, thank you. All right, all right, I'm going to hand it over to Tim Kovich. Tim?
Thank you. So these relationships, we've been very fortunate. We've had them for several decades in the Kent School District, and we've been able to expand with these agencies now to represent all the jurisdictions that Kent School District is in, the city of Kent, the city of Covington, and unincorporated King County. And that's been very beneficial for us in all the aspects that Randy mentioned on the previous slide. And they have become that KSD team with us. And so they work alongside us on a daily basis. So it's just been, I want to say thank you. It's just been really great. So, and to kind of get into some of the specifics when we start looking at contracts, currently where we've been sitting with these agencies, just to give you some background, is the city of Kent has grown in that partnership, and they've come forward and they pay 40% of our contracts, and the school district pays the other 60 remaining for 2 officers that Kent Police provides. And those estimated costs for the last year were for the 2 officers total right around $192,000 for the Kent contracts. In Covington, Chief McCurdy has also come forward, and they've been doing cost sharing with us for many years now. KSD is paying 60%, and Covington is paying 40% also. And there's 1 officer that's represented out of Covington, and that's estimated somewhere around $120,000 for that SRO for a year. And then unincorporated King County, We do pay 100% of that county officer, and they're out more specifically in a smaller location, more individual to 1 to 2 schools, and I can get into that in a little bit of the future.
All right, so
That's me, Randy, right?
that's you. Yep.
So with new legislation that's recently come out in the state of Washington, there's also been definitions, and yes, school resource officer does mean commissioned law enforcement officer in the state of Washington. They do make arrests, they do work in and around our buildings, but they also are specifically there to address crime. The big focus that came out of this is that the school resource officers should focus on keeping students out of the criminal justice system whenever possible. And that is a big push in this as they're working in the educational systems here.
So Tim, do you want to highlight, I think one of the things that, when we were looking at this was, how often do school resource officers make arrests of our students in the schools? And what we found is it's very rare. It's been very rare in recent years.
Correct. There is a pretty big misconception that the SROs are making arrests actually in schools, and that in Kent, that is not the fact. We have one SRO with the city of Kent, been working with us, I believe, close to 14 to 15 years. That SRO pre-COVID only made one arrest in 2 years out of all of the contacts that were made, and that was because of a firearm situation. Weapons are the primary reason that something like that would occur. Also, there's mandatory reporting issues, and then there's other involvements that officers are there because they're reporting to victims of crimes in our building. So arrests are not occurring the way most people think. And I don't know if Chief McCurdy or Commander Grove could also expand on that.
Well, I'll say one thing just to make sure there's no confusion between arrests being made and interactions, because the frequency of use for these officers is high. And having been in a position to oversee them, the interaction is high and the engagements are often, but the arrests and the negative outcomes are very low. So I just wanted to emphasize that point.
Thanks.
And I'll just add that, when we prioritize how these officers are going to be acting in the schools and, what they place emphasis on, whether that be making arrests or, focusing on other positive interactions like mentorship and so on and so forth, that is all done with a lot of communication and coordination with the school staff, because we want to make sure that our objectives as the law enforcement officers in the school are aligning with the objectives of the school and the goals, and that we're all kind of on the same page about the purpose and intent of having those officers there.
And then I think the other thing we really wanted to emphasize is that, some of our schools are located in very urban, high crime areas, and our school resource officers are also very helpful in trying to address people that may be wandering onto our campuses that are not supposed to be there, and being able to help keep people off the campus that shouldn't be there in order to keep our kids safe. So, okay. Trying to move it to the next slide. Sorry. There we go. Tim, back to you.
Sure, thanks. Part of the school resource officers and what they've been doing, these are some of the primary duties that they've been carrying out in our schools and some you've heard of before, working with the emergency response to all of our schools. They do contact a lot of what Randy said, adults, criminal situations that are near our campuses. But they also work on the emergency preparedness piece. They work on our drills with state compliance. They get to know those buildings. They assist in off-campus welfare checks. and building those strong relationships with the students in just casual conversations, being there, saying hi. A lot of those have continued into some secondary duties with working with career days, family nights, other safety presentations with parents. They do assist us with our after hours events, dances, football games. There is police explorer programs that have taken place, and they are involved in some of the restorative justice practices in the school. So these are things that they have already been doing. And we've been reporting on these things for several years, all the way back to 2010 with monthly board reports and then quarterly reports. These are just ongoing types of things we've shared so that you can see what is going on with not only our safety officers, but with the SROs working in the schools.
Hey, Tim, can you just touch on real quick that compute trace LoJack?
The CompuTrace and LoJack, that was something that in the past has been a big help with law enforcement working in recovery of a lot of our computer systems. I have recently heard that, very recently, that may be going away and using some existing systems that we already have here with our DARTS teams. And I think that may also be a cost sharing, but we will be communicating with law enforcement for certain situations. So.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Hey, Tim, if I could add something on that slide real quick too, as
Yeah.
well, please. So on the secondary duties in Covington, our school resource officer takes the lead on a number of mentoring and after-school programs as well. She does helps me with the badges and barbells program. We run a summer leadership camp for that as well, where we do a cop versus firefighter program at the end. We do recognize one student every year as the Covington Police Student of the Year at each of our elementary schools in town. And she also runs some crime scene, like science classes for the students and so on. And within the city of Covington, one of our goals is that when we have the school resource officers in the schools, our goal is to have a relationship between an officer and a student prior to there being a crisis. Because if they have that relationship and they know each other, then when there is a crisis, it's much less likely to spin out of control and end up in something that's negative, because they've got that relationship not just with that individual school resource officer, but also with a person in a position of authority and even a person wearing a uniform. We've really tried to build those strong bonds so that on both ends of it, so officers trust the students and know them, but also so that the students know and trust the officers.
Great. All right. Ooh, shoot. Okay. All right. Let's see. Sorry.
Want me to take that, Randy?
Yeah, that is yours. Yeah.
Okay. This was the new passing of the RCW. We have mentioned in a previous, I believe, work session piece. It is coming in effect this July, I believe, 25th. And part of this big piece was the mentioning of having policies for SROs, which we recently, thank you, board, just moved forward so that we have an aligned policy for an SRO program in place. And then some of these requirements establish the effective partnerships for all the students piece. And we'll get into in some of the slides as we move forward some of those pieces that are key points within that RCW.
Okay.
Big topic within this is there are 12 mandated training topics in different areas. This training mirrors a lot of the training that other staff within our schools get, not just safety officers or school resource officers as we move forward, but this has been going on in schools already. Working with the trauma-informed approaches, working with youth, the educational rights of students with disabilities and relationships. I'm just kind of reading off the list, but this talks about the bias-free policing, de-escalation techniques with youth. And these requirements will be working with our local Puget Sound ESD for all the safety officers and the SROs. We'll have to get this, work through this training piece, and then they're going to annually be checked off on, I believe. And Andy, Chief McCurdy, I know you're involved in this coming up real soon.
Yeah, so I've been involved in criminal justice reform for about 15 years now at the national level and locally. And one of the projects I've been working on recently has been in collaboration with the ESD 105 in Yakima, and we're creating a certification program to meet the requirements of this RCW. And basically the concept is, and I know that all of the SROs that are serving Kent School District are going to be attending next week when we have the training in Yakima. And the concept is that each of the school resource officers is going to attend training and receive information about all 12 different categories of reform. And they, from that training they receive, they're actually going to be developing a self-reflective journal. The goal of this reform is really to develop self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and try to help officers understand the concerns that the public has and the community has about them being in the school system, and try to address some of those by making sure that they have adequate training and resources available to avoid some of the negative consequences that have brought extra scrutiny to law enforcement being in schools. So the way it's going to work is each school resource officer is going to attend the training in Yakima, and they're going to receive information and resources about each of the 12 categories. And then they're going to develop a portfolio. And in that portfolio, they're going to have a journal for each of those 12 categories where they're going to describe in their own words what the category means. They're going to personalize their experience, their training, the school policy, kind of the intent behind that for them specifically to personalize it. And then they're going to develop an action plan that's going to help them. It's going to be a SMART goal that's going to help them implement reform in those areas to make sure that that their work product and the measures that are being used to measure their performance are going to align with the goals of the legislation. So I'm pretty excited about this. I think it's a unique way to approach something like this, because typically, like most adult training, when we get from work, we expect to go sit there and listen to somebody lecture to us or give us some information or talk about their experiences. But what we're trying to do with this training is make the training so that it's unique to that school resource officer and their experience and background, and that they actually are going to need to have sign off and buy-in from their supervisor and from the school administrators. And once they've accumulated their portfolio for all 12 categories and it's signed off, then they will be certified as a school resource officer. And then they'll be able to go back annually and kind of review and revise each of those 12 categories to see if there's new information or new training or anything else. If the district's expectations or concerns change, then they can adapt those annually when they go back and review that portfolio. So that's going to be occurring next week, and it's going to be an ongoing process. It'll take, many of the SROs may take all summer to develop their portfolio and get signed off to be certified. And there's a bunch of different resources being accumulated by the OSPI to help support those officers in doing so. This training is also being made available to school safety officers, because the more recent legislation actually captured school safety officers in the same requirements as school resource officers. But then with school safety officers, it actually added a couple additional categories of requirements to include having to have like some sort of a field training program and some other extra requirements, since school safety officers don't typically have a police academy or field training program provided by a law enforcement agency. So that's kind of the concept. Some of the categories obviously are going to require a lot more training than others. As an example, trauma-informed interviewing. Within that, we're going to encourage officers to attend the week-long forensic child interview school, so they know how to do a proper trauma-informed interview of a child, especially if they've been involved in something like sexual assault or child abuse. But then some of the other areas are really more about going back and reviewing data information from their own school district, so they can reflect upon how they're doing their job to make sure that they're addressing any concerns there may be about disproportionate impacts of criminal justice system or school resource officer involvement in the schools.
All right, so the next part is the program requirement is a clear statement regarding school resource officers' duties and the responsibilities related to student behavior and discipline. And so what this is really about is making sure that we can write policies, we can write rules, but we know that, and we can train staff, but we know that sometimes, when you're dealing with humans, things happen. And so one of the things I think that is really important about this new legislation is that our school resource officers receive the level of training that they are, and our school safety officers are. But then we also, as a district, have a responsibility to train and educate our school staff, because our school administrators, our teachers, our counselors, everyone who's working in the school, to make sure that they understand they should not be calling police officers in for things that are school discipline. And so we plan on really hitting this training a lot with our school administrators. Need to go through the laws and the new changes regarding school resource officers and safety officers. And we really need to let them know that, this is, give them scenarios. This is not a situation you would call a police officer in. This is a situation you would call a police officer in, and then really continue to do that training. And by training both the police officers and safety officers and our school staff, then there's opportunities for both sides to say, stop, this isn't an appropriate use of, here. So, that if for some reason, the more people who understand the clear parameters between about the role of the school resource officer and the school safety officer, the better off we are in making sure that they are not put into situations in which they should not be a part. Okay. Okay, and so next, Tim, that was you.
Yeah, so there will be, OSPI is still working on some of the format on annual collection of data from the interactions with law enforcement, along with safety officers will also be doing that. It appears that it's very similar to some of our past board reports on the summaries of the interaction. It also will go as far as the complaint process and any complaints against the officer and or safety officer in the situations. And that'll be done at a state level annual report. But I expect that you'll be seeing more of some similar things from safety, regardless whether it's at the state. We'll probably be continuing to do our reports. And we'll be working with the law enforcement agency and getting a clear complaint process up, similar to what KSD already has up on the webpage about filing concerns. And then we'll be working with law enforcement on those and in those specific agencies. But a clear, detailed piece outlined on that will be out there for everyone to see in the near future.
All right, so to summarize, here are our next steps in this whole process. So we have the 21-22 contracts. One of the things that the new law requires is that we gather community, student, family input. And so this is, we've been working with Melissa Larmy and her team to really figure out how we're going to do this. We are planning a thought exchange within the next week or so around this presentation will be available to be viewed. The sample MOUs from WASDA will be shared also, and then we will gather some input through that process. And then we are looking to bring some community forums together in early August is our plan, of maybe ones that are focused on students, staff, and community. And then our idea is that we will have finalized contracts that both the cities and the county have looked at and we're comfortable with, and that we've gained insight on to bring to the board at the August board meeting hopefully you will have had your questions answered and concerns addressed, and we've made and you will be ready hopefully to approve those contracts at that August board meeting. We are going to be working on the complaint process. As we said, we're still trying to work out exactly what that will look like. We do envision there will be a website that is clear on our district website around if you have a complaint against either a school safety officer or a school resource officer. These are the processes you would follow, and then contact information also at the 3 law enforcement agencies. So if they wanted to contact them directly, they would know how to do that as well. We're like Tim mentioned that we are looking at how to best present collect this data. Well, it's a requirement of the law, so we will be presenting it. We're just trying to do it in the most user-friendly, transparent way that is usable for the public. And so we will work with our DARTS team to create hopefully some dashboards that will easily show this data for our public. And then the training of KSD staff on the role of the resource officers and the staff. Like I said, it is very important that the staff in the schools understand when it is appropriate to bring in our police officers and safety officers and when it is not, so that we can avoid situations that really nobody wants. And so that training happens on both sides of there. Okay, so we're at the point where we are open to questions, and we'll say that we're all anxious to answer any questions that you have.
Members of the board.
I have a couple of questions. One of Mr. Heath, you said that you're planning a community forum for students in early August. I'm wondering if there's a different time or a better time that could happen. As it's summer, you might not get student voice or input in anything if you try to do a forum for students in August.
Yeah, we will be inviting them to the thought exchange as well. So there will be an opportunity to do that as well. I think if we'll work with the team to try to make sure that we get information out to students. We do want a broad set. We want to hear from students. We're just trying to figure out, we want to do it in a meaningful way. And we talked about, is there something we could rush together in June? And we just want to be purposeful about how we do this and make sure that it's out there.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions. If you can go back a couple of slides, I'm wondering if this is an OSPI wording. One more slide, please. Or if this is a KSD. I don't know why I have a problem, but it could just be a me thing where it talks about informal teacher or informal counselor. Our school staff go and get certified in their area of expertise for many years to be called a teacher or a counselor. So I don't know where that wording comes from. I don't know why it bugs me, but I just think like we have people who are trained counselors and trained mental health professionals and trained teachers. I'm just wondering if that's a OSPI wording or if that comes from us.
Tim, do you know that?
That did not come from us, KSD. That did come from OSPI and the RCW with definitions for the school resource officer. So that was put into, I believe, the RCW.
Okay, that makes sense.
I wanted to clarify, if I could clarify a little bit too. The school resource officers do have curriculum that they often teach, and sometimes it has to do, like, as an example, Officer Davey will teach the crime scene lab in science classes and so on. So even though they're not, certified teachers in the state, they do take that role of teacher. And I understand your point about, the credentials and so on. But I think that broad term of teaching and instructing, they'll talk about internet safety and, personal safety and those kind of things as well. So even though they're not teachers, they do take that role of teaching occasionally. So.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And the last thing I have is there's a lot of talk about mental health and supporting mental health. And I'm just curious, I guess a couple of questions is like, how many hours of training for mental health do the SROs go through to support students that may have mental health issues? So at a minimum, in the state of Washington, police officers are now required to have 40-hour CIT class.
In addition to that, they also have additional crisis intervention training in the academy. There's also a CIT for youth, crisis intervention training for youth. That's a 40-hour class that most SROs attend. I know that at least one, I think both of the SROs that work for the sheriff's office, the one in Covington and the one in unincorporated, I believe have both been through that CIT youth one as well. So that's about 80 hours. And then we also have annual update training in relation to that. In the kind of that broad context of mental health, it's being incorporated into almost all of the training that we do now. We have de-escalation training annually, everything from use of force and defensive tactics, the mental health aspect, and kind of, whether we call it mental health first aid or the elements of it, how they impact de-escalation are incorporated throughout. So it's kind of hard to give a number for how much training there is, but it's pretty extensive.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'll pause because other people have questions. So thank you so much.
Mr. Heath, I have a couple of comments here. And number one is, I would hopefully, when we have this community forum, we had talked about getting our kids to be part of the panel, because there is such a misconception a lot in our community about what our officers do in the schools. And I see that over and over and again. And somehow or other, we got to do a better job of educating our public too. And the best way to do that, I mean, if you've ever been down in Olympia, when the kids talk, everybody listens. And so I just would like to see that. And I did enjoy, I was on the ESD, I think it was the last one they had, maybe next to last or something, when Aaron Jones was there, and a lot of the officers talked about all the various programs that they were running. They were very different, from Spokane to Yakima to over here. And it's amazing. I think people need to realize what these people are doing in the schools. See it, feel it, touch it, and it would help our perception so much. And thank you for the presentation tonight.
Welcome.
Yeah, I actually want to second what Director Hamada said, because I think one of the things is people don't really hear but from the school resource officers until there's a problem, and the adults. And so it would be really great. My thought is, how can you put them in front of parents and community members and even students prior to school even starting, like, schedule pickup or open house or something like that. Maybe having them have a piece where they introduce themselves and say what they're there for. Because unfortunately, like I said, most people hear from them when there's a problem. And so I think it'd be really nice to set that tone, to know that, they're here to help and support students. And I know they are. And so, but I think it would be beneficial to get in front of it and to actually bring them to the forefront and introduce them and have them be a part of the staff introductions or whatever that looks like.
That's a great suggestion.
I apologize for missing the first few minutes of the meeting. I did want to ask about cultural relevancy training. Are there anything that was there anything that was discussed? And if so, I can watch the video later. Do we have anything prepared to? I just remember during the anti-bias trainings that I conducted many years ago, that was the only training that was available to police officers. And so I'm just wondering how we're incorporating our cultural relevancy trainings for safety officers as well as resource officers.
I can address that just a little bit at the upcoming training next week in Yakima. I don't know if you were on the call for that portion of the discussion, but that's one of the 12 categories of required training for school resource officers under the recent legislation. There is going to be some onus on the school districts to make sure that that training is relevant to their district, because especially when we talk about cultural competency, I think it's going to vary from one part of the state to another. So although they will be receiving kind of some general training on it, the exercise and the portfolio development for certification is going to require that school resource officer get out and get to know their community and be able to personalize and create an action plan about how they're going to address cultural competency and bias in any way that it might affect their profession. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm gonna be I think the fourth person to say I agree, it's really important to get in front of kids. And I'll be honest, on this matter, when I hear about a thought exchange, that again, there've been so many thought exchanges, and I consistently hear that, we're not hearing from people who this impacts the most for whatever reason. It's just not, I don't think the students get access to the thought exchange. I think there's also concerns about having to create a profile. I think it sets up barriers. So I'm going to be the fourth or maybe fifth board director to say what's going to be most important is that our students engage in this work in a meaningful way, meaning that what the students are most concerned about, those concerns are addressed. So, and that families have a chance to participate, and that instead of just listening, we actually can point to changes or things we make to our structure based on what the students and families think. So it's not performative. So it is impactful, and that our families and students feel comfortable and safe with all these new changes. I wanted to ask back early on, you talked about the costs for City of Kent, City of Covington, King County, and it sounds like the City of Kent and City of Covington have dedicated officers that are regularly in the schools. For the King County Sheriff, is it the same officer? Yes, okay. I see a nod, yes. And then I'm assuming that's just a couple schools. That's maybe Northwood and Ridgewood and Fairwood?
Actually, it's Kent Lake and Grass Lake and Sawyer Woods. When there are other calls for service that are up in the Fairwood area, that officer has been pulled from time to time, but we often rely on those local district cars there. So they are not assigned to the Northwood area, no.
Okay, so is Northwood the only middle school that doesn't have an assigned SRO?
That is correct.
Okay, that's interesting. Do we know why?
It was just part of the original contracting that was done with King County, and the funds that allowed that, because the spacing was so far apart in the response aspects of those jurisdictions. That's all that was done at the time. And that they were primarily focused on high school and then supporting the middle schools after the high school piece.
Okay.
There is opportunity for growth in that, but right now we do not have that specific school.
Okay. And then my next question is, so you talked about restorative justice circles. Is that in all our secondary schools?
Those, Randy Heath, I think you have a lot of information on all of those programs.
So all of our safety officers, and I'm not sure if I don't think all of our current police officers were here when we had that grant a few years ago that trained all of our counselors along with our safety officers. And there were some police officers in there as well. I don't think all of our current ones have been there around restorative practices. So, it's one that we need to continue to train all of our staff on, on a regular basis. So.
Okay, so that was a grant. So it ended. And so since that grant ended, we haven't had any of the restorative justice circles?
No, it's
training?
the training itself. And there has been additional training that other buildings have sought out. That was a specific grant that brought the training for counselors, and we included our safety officers and police officers at the time in that grant because we thought it was important for them to be a part of it as well.
So when did this happen? Like last year or long?
18-19 school year, if I remember correctly.
I think you are correct. Yes.
Okay. So with turnover, et cetera, it's possible that we have not everyone is on the same page with restorative justice circles.
It is possible that everyone that is filling that role right now has not been trained.
Okay. So, but there's no plan for training? You acknowledge we probably need it, but it's not in the plan?
It's one of those things that we look at. It is happening in buildings that have embraced it, and it's been ongoing. We offer that as one of the supports and trainings that happen through our MTSS coaches. They are able to help lead some of that training in the buildings. And so it is happening district-wide. Is there like a blanket, every single staff, every building has gotten it in recent years? No.
So it's not consistent amongst the secondary schools.
Randy, I appreciate your question or your responses, and Vice President Bettinger, appreciate your questions. I think you are certainly onto something. Obviously, we have conducted trainings, teachings, invested time and talent to support restorative practices at all levels. I would say that it is an opportunity for us now, and Randy, hearing this and team, how might we assess where we are currently? Do we know that each of our restorative practices that are being implemented at high levels or at full implementation? I can't say that they are, but I can't say that they aren't either. That's something that we do need to take a closer look at where they're operating, how well they're operating. And I think that's information certainly we can provide our entire board and community.
It's just, the clarity is helpful, because if you're saying we're doing something and it's not in all the schools, then, that feels disingenuous to me. And so I'm just trying to get to the heart of all that we're doing and understand fully. So, if anyone should ask me, and also to know what, we're doing for our students and what we're monitoring. And so again, when I see something like that, or when I hear that, and then I find out hasn't been even trained on since 1819, unless it's selected, again, I just want to understand. Sometimes when I hear things that we're doing in the district, but it's not district-wide, like to hear that Northwood is a middle school that doesn't have, an SRO, and they get pulled, that's something that concerns this neighborhood in this area. And so it's good to know.
Absolutely.
But it's just like, I would prefer if it's something that's district wide and that is updated all the time, that's helpful. But if it's something that was last trained with any, rigor in the 18-19 school year, well then, and it's not in every school, then it would be helpful to know that just going in.
Thank you. And that's you're saying exactly what I agree with, which is we need to know. Certainly, just like we've talked about in other situations, some implementation may be happening at some of our schools that we don't know about it. It may be happening well. And that's something we just have to continue to learn and understand, just like something that may be happening in a classroom or a theater that may not be happening at another school. Once we know, and we know how to respond. And I certainly look forward to our follow-up as soon as we know a little bit more about this situation. And thank you, team, including our safety services team and Randy, for what you've done thus far. We have made some strides. And I will add this, our restorative practices is operating at different levels. And what I mean by that, restorative practice can be, so I just want to make sure this is not a one size fits all. Restorative practices can be a check and connect when I walk into the classroom. It is ultimately about establishing relationships with other individuals. It's the human aspect of this that is most important. So it's hard to say that it's happening at every classroom in the same way. But again, this is something that we can look further into about how well, as I mentioned, where it's happening, how well it's happening, and be able to share more with our board and our teams.
Dr. Watts, I just wanted to say, I think that's a great plan. If I could see, I think it would be helpful to our parents and everything if we saw this all accumulated data to know where we're at. And I think that would just pinpoint what we're doing. And if we need to add more here or there, and some of these people, because I've been involved in this and some of this stuff with my mentees, that they're doing some really good, great things that I think they could share if they had what they're doing with other people. You know, not reinvent the wheel, but share some of this with other schools or something like that. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Watts, I appreciate the clarification as well. I was about to say, if we are talking about equity, it's where the needs are. That's where we're going to prioritize. But I did want to ask about Kingmakers, and I know that we had talked about having them do a type of inventory on what is happening in the schools. And what is the progress there? Like, how can we get information through that process, what's happening with our program safety officers as well as our resource officers and their involvement with the programming there?
Well, I think that's a process that we can continue to engage in a broader, deeper way as we have listened to, and whether it's my involvement as well as Ms. Larmy and team members throughout those, and including board members who have been a part of some special programs. The reality is that we have work that we need to do, and that Kingmakers is working with several school districts across the country, engaging in similar approaches to restoring relationships. That's really what restorative practice is about. So I think that's a conversation. I don't have additional specific data about what and how, but I do know that they are very skilled and have experiences working with other school districts. We are engaging in a next step of our contractual relationship, and I do believe that will be one area that we can broaden and deepen our experiences in our classrooms, in our boardroom, in our meeting rooms for all leaders, and our students and our families as well.
Dr. Watts, if I may, and Director Van Godesalam,
Please.
Great thought. I wanted to point out that earlier today, we heard that we have had regularly every year for our safety officers an academy. It's a multiple day academy that we hold in August. Obviously with the pandemic, that's been a little different. But we do prioritize areas of need during that academy. Mr. Heath himself has done multi-tier systems of support, focus and de-escalation and some other things as an example. But certainly as we continue to work with Kingmakers, we are set up with a process already in place for our SROs and our safety officers.
Great, thank you.
And that's all good too, but it needs to, I think training needs to be continuous. Like it can't just be one and done. And like even on this call tonight, I heard people say autistic kid or autistic student when we should use people-centered or people-first language. And like there's stuff that we can always like continue to learn, and like it can't just be one and done. We need to continue knowledge. And I know I've been trained on restorative justice, and I did the whole training for a year through the Northwest Center for Restorative Justice. And I still do updates because I think it's important to do that. So like, it's like 18, 19, I know that we're planning and that people are at different levels, but if we're going to say we do restorative justice, we have to make sure that there's a plan in place and that we're doing it with fidelity and not, again, just saying, oh, this school did it, so we do restorative justice, check. Like it needs to be something that if we're going to say we're doing it, we're actually doing it with fidelity.
Thank you, Director Benno. Appreciate that. And that what I meant by that academy is one, we do have ongoing days of training throughout the year. And so again, whatever we prioritize, depending on what it is, can have continuation. There's a number of things that they do cover operationally, but there are things that we do carry on throughout the year.
I do want to mention that Chief McCurdy does have a city council meeting to get to here at 6:30. So I want to make sure that we don't make him late.
Thank you, Chief McCurdy.
Thank you.
I have a couple minutes if anybody has any other questions for me before I leave. I appreciate your guys' comments. When I go back next week to Yakima, we're working on the journaling and the portfolio development, especially your comment earlier about making sure students are involved. That's the kind of stuff I want to make sure is included in action plans. I want these the concepts not just to be kind of something that floats around out there, but to be something that the school resource officers are motivated to actually implement, and that we have measures in place to make sure that they're actually following through. So that's the goal, and those are the kind of things I'd love to incorporate. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're done with our presentation if we're ready to move on to the next.
Thank you, Randy. That does conclude safety services, and according to our schedule, we'll move to facilities.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Watts.
Thank you.
I want to now, the next hour, we will be covering, starting with facilities, as I mentioned earlier, then moving into our capital planning with Mr. Buzzard. So I'd like to now introduce our Assistant Director of Facilities, Gordon Cook. Gordon.
All right, good evening. Get my screen up here. Okay, can we see that? Okay. Vice President Bettinger, board members, Dr. Watts, Ms. Santello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share information with you this evening about the facilities team. This presentation will cover our organizational structure, the facilities team, the operations team, the maintenance team, our plans and goals, and we'll end with questions. Organization. The facilities team includes the maintenance and operations teams. The facilities team includes me, 2 supervisors, 3 office support personnel, 2 operations leads, 160 custodians, 30 maintenance employees, 4 of which also perform duties of leads. This is a total of 198 members. A study by OSPI in 2010 stated that to achieve the level of school facility maintenance required to support state-funded education programs in a district our size, we should have about 300 custodians and about 127 maintenance team members. Together, this team is responsible for 3,793,706 square feet of buildings and 691 acres of grass, sports and play fields, parking lots, playgrounds, sidewalks, and planting beds. Our facilities team. We support the Kent School District's mission to successfully prepare all students for their futures by providing facilities that are clean, safe, appropriate, and operational. Each person in our facilities team has specific responsibilities and primary duties of their own, but we all work together in support of all facilities team members and all facilities work. My role as Assistant Director of Facilities is to plan, organize, manage, and direct all aspects of operations of facilities, facility use, maintenance, custodial operations, surplus land, and rental properties to ensure regulatory compliance with safety, life safety, water testing, asbestos, surface water management, pesticide, and herbicide application, to develop a master facilities plan that will track in one place facility replacement needs and to support capital planning and other KSD communities in our shared mission. Marcy Jepkins, our office manager and admin 5, the only one left on the admin campus, has responsibilities that include processing work orders, taking emergency calls, processing all facilities small work documents, paying and tracking utilities, which is gas, electrical power, water and sewer, and trash. She supports the assistant director, 2 supervisors, and 2 admin assistants. She is a controller for School Dude, which is our work order system. She works with capital planning to coordinate work, pays and tracks property taxes, reviews and processes overtime sheets, processes invoices and tracks budgets for maintenance and operations, processes hiring of maintenance staff, and supports interviews along with large bid processes. Valerie Loopy Carlson is admin 3. She supports the maintenance supervisor, conducts P-card reconciliation for over 40 cards involving hundreds of transactions, does key control, tracks pesticide use, tracks training, tracks equipment inspections like lifts. She's the admin for the safety committee. She tracks CBA reimbursements of clothing and tools, tracks filter orders, and coordinates trash and recycle pickups. We are continually cross-training in our office to provide support for covering for absences and changes in personnel. Operations team. The operations team is one of the most diverse teams in the Kent School District. Steve Fairbanks, the operations supervisor, is responsible for evaluations, hiring, discipline, conflict resolution, leadership development, accountability, holding clean standards, mentoring leads and groups, improving leadership. He onboards new employees. He holds an operational team training day twice a year. And 2 years ago, they included the maintenance team in an equity training that they were having. Dawn Coots is an admin 3. She supports our operations supervisor. She provides administrative support, custodial substitute coordination, tracks attendance, provides technical support to help custodians navigate technology, reviews and processes overtime sheets, and processes hiring of custodial staff and supports interviews. Leslie Kramer and Greg Ryan are our operations leads. They work the swing shift and provide after-hour support and oversight training, repair equipment, deliver products, conduct site inspections. They are part of the hiring process. They support leadership development and assist Steve in his duties, train custodial teams in proper processes. The general, I'm sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm not sure if your operations team slide needs to be here. I just.
Yep, sorry, I'm not pressing.
Thank you.
Not pressing the button. Thank you.
That's okay.
Trying to watch too many things. Okay, so here we are still with the operations team. Yep. The general responsibilities of the custodial team are to operate schools. They open schools, gates, interior areas, lightings, have them ready for staff and students. They check status of buildings for leaks, broken windows, etc. They check the HVAC system, raise flags, walk grounds, check for graffiti, vandalism, and unsafe conditions. They set up for breakfast, clean up breakfast, set up for lunch, clean up lunch. Elementary heads may clean in the morning depending on work schedules for the day. They check their emails, respond to needs of students and staff during the day. They stock inventory. 8 hours receive assignments and tasks for the day. Daily complete at least the 3 basics, which are to dump trash, clean, disinfect restrooms, and vacuum. Before leaving, they check the building, turn everything off, lock doors and set alarms, and close and lock gates. The custodial team changes lamps that are accessible both inside and outside the building. They call in emergency work orders and submit other work order requests electronically. They provide customer support to students and staff and support all building use and operations. We have a custodial subpool currently that has 8 substitute custodians. Assignment begins at the elementary level for coverage and works out from there. And they cover the work of the person who they're filling in for. Duties on special occasions include snow removal to clear walking paths and fire watches. In the summer, the team moves to the day shift, conducts deep cleaning, and helps with some grounds work. There is also a cold weather team whose responsibility is to prepare and monitor our buildings during extreme cold weather conditions. They also monitor buildings as weather warms after extreme cold conditions. The goal of this team is to help ensure our buildings are ready for students and staff in the morning. The high school teams. KM has 10 custodians, a head custodian, an assistant head, and 8 8-hour custodians. Kent Lake, Kent Ridge, and Kentwood all have 9 custodians, a head custodian, assistant head, and 7 8-hour custodians. Kent Laboratory Academy will have 3 custodians, a head, an assistant head, and a 4-hour. iGrad has one custodian that works early in the morning before iGrad opens. The admin center has 5 custodians, a head custodian, 2 8 hours, and 2 4 hours. The shifts are: the heads work during the day until lunch. Assistant heads work swing shift from 2 to 11 p.m. with some of the team members. 2 custodian team members work the graveyard, which is 11 to 6:30 a.m. Teams also provide coverage and support for facility use as needed. At the middle school, Cedar Heights and Mill Creek have 5 custodians, a head, an assistant head, 2 8 hours, and 1 4-hour. Matson has 4 custodians, a head, an assistant head, 1 8-hour, and 1 4-hour. Meeker and Northwood have 4 custodians, a head, an assistant head, and 2 8 hours. Meridian Middle has 5 custodians, a head, an assistant head, 1 8-hour, and 2 4 hours. The shifts are: the head works during the day, assistant heads, and all of the others work the swing shift. They also provide coverage and support for facility use as needed. The elementary teams. All elementary teams have a head and an assistant head. Additional team members are added based on the number of students. 9 sites have an 8-hour custodian, and they are Covington, East Hill, Martin Sortoon, Meadow Ridge, Meridian Elementary, Panther Lake, Park Orchard, Scenic Hill, and Sunrise. River Ridge will have 2 8 hours and a 4-hour. Neelio has 2 additional 4 hours. The shifts are: the heads work during the day, assistant heads and all others work the next shift. Teams provide coverage and support for facilities use also as needed. Our maintenance team. Kurt Anderson, maintenance supervisor, is responsible for evaluations, hiring, discipline, conflict resolution, leadership development, accountability, hold maintenance and building standards, mentor leads and groups, involve leadership, onboards new employees. He obtains quotes for maintenance projects and work, assists sites and projects requests, works and quotes. He supports capital planning as needed and oversees work order request process. The maintenance team maintains our facilities, which include buildings and grounds. They respond to emergencies, complete work order repairs, conduct preventative maintenance, conduct compliance work, respond to special requests and needs. The 4 teams in the maintenance team are the building trades, the electrical plumbing, grounds, and the mechanical team. The maintenance team leads coordinate work of the team with the maintenance supervisor and provide subject matter input in areas of expertise in support of teams and district goals. The maintenance teams work several shifts to support buildings and conduct work as efficiently as possible. The shifts are 6 to 2:30, 7 to 3:30, 7:30 to 4, and 2 to 10:30. We have an electronic work order system, SchoolDude. Work orders are prioritized as emergency, high, medium, and low priorities. Emergencies include things like heating, cooling, bees, broken windows, burning, smell or smoke, doors not able to be secured, elevator problems, fire, flooding, graffiti, toilets or sinks that are clogged or running or overflowing, no hot water, safety, security, water leaks, and vandalism. High priority items impact students and staff but are not emergencies. Medium priority items need to be done but are not an immediate impact to students and staff. And low priorities are nice to have. In 2018-2019, the maintenance team completed 8,800 work orders. In 2019 and 2020, they completed 7,623 work orders. And so far this year, they have completed 4,823 work orders. When I share this data about work orders with you, it's important to understand that each work order counts the same, but may be very different. For example, repairing a lock may take 30 minutes and repairing a boiler may take 3 days, but each count as one work order. There are no substitutes who fill in for the trades positions. We have many positions that are filled by only one tradesperson. This impacts the work during planned and unplanned absences. We also have an on-call maintenance position that is made up of volunteers from maintenance and operations. They respond to emergencies and support operations after hours as needed. The goal of this position is to help ensure our buildings are ready for students and staff each morning. They respond to reports from our monitoring service about fire, flooding, or security, check sites during power outages, cover broken windows, secure buildings after break-ins, open and close buildings for contractors, and they update the maintenance supervisor on the status and condition of buildings and the sites in the district. Traditionally, we hire 16 summer temps in the summer. This group usually consists of college students, but has included bus drivers and paraeducators. The group supplements our maintenance team in support of fire alarm testing, HVAC preventative maintenance, boiler maintenance, clearing of retention ponds, and detailed grounds work, parking lot painting, and building trades work. Our building team consists of a lead who is also a locksmith. We have one glazer who works with glass and is also learning to be a locksmith. We have one painter who works during the day to assist with graffiti calls and completes work that does not impact students or staff. Two of our painters work at night so they can complete work in classrooms and offices and other locations as needed without impacting students. We have a maintenance tech. This is a non-journey level position that helps, supports, learns, and conducts work as abilities permit. We have a carpenter who also does floor and tile work, and a roofer who conducts preventative maintenance and repairs and responds to emergencies. On the electrical plumbing team, we have two electricians. One of the electricians is also the team lead. Electricians service and maintain all interior and exterior electrical systems. We have one fire alarm technician who is certified to conduct fire alarm confidence testing. Have a security alarm technician who installs, supports, maintains security alarm systems, and works with safety services in support of access control systems, which are the badge readers. The maintenance mechanic conducts preventative maintenance and repair on generators, bleachers, operable walls, and basketball goals. We have two plumbers that conduct plumbing repair and service and complete backflow testing each year that is required by law. Plumbers are responsible for hot water heaters and associated pumps and supply systems. Grounds team, we have groundskeepers have and keep current pesticide spray licenses, which are required by law to use any pesticides or herbicides on any school properties. Our irrigation technician is also the lead. The irrigation technician takes care of irrigation systems, controls, and services and maintains those systems. Groundskeepers mow grass, edge, pick up leaves, spray beds, fence lines, remove noxious weeds, fertilize grass, trim trees and bushes, maintain fence and signs, repair asphalt, playground matting, and playground toys. They clear retention ponds and check, repair, and maintain catch basins and storm drainage systems. They service equipment in the off-season and plow and sand parking lots as needed. The mechanical team maintains heating and cooling controls and systems. This includes HVAC units, boilers, cooling towers, building loop systems, and associated valves and control pumps, supply and exhaust fans and ductings. They conduct preventative maintenance on systems. The boiler technician services and maintains boilers and ensures compliance with the boiler inspector. The mechanical team support the custodial staff with filter service and operation of the electronic energy management system. Plans and goals. For facilities, our plans and goals are to build a single database to track building and equipment life expectancy for budget planning, to continue to develop short-term and long-term goals of district and team, to continue to build facility assessment reports, to monitor and develop ability to track internal building use, to track building use through electronic facility use tool, to support, develop, and purposely build team capacity, to support capital planning and district growth in support of students and staff, to increase the development of team leadership with growth opportunities and supportive interactions, and to develop positive relationships with other leaders and communities. One of our part under this that I've listed is for portables, and portables are moved as needed to support changes in enrollment. The ages of our portables are, we have 10 that were built in the 1960s, 21 that were built in the 1980s, 74 that were built in the 1990s, 13 that were built in the 2000s, 46 that are from the 2010s, and I have 13 that I don't have documented what their age is. So in the district, for a total, we have 177 portables. 72 of these do not have air conditioning, and 105 do have air conditioning. 172 of these portables are at school sites. In 2019-2020, 157 of these were being used for classrooms, and 7 of these are at the end of their useful life due to age and deterioration. 5 of the 177 portables are here on the admin campus. Operations, our plans and goals are to our equity in distribution of teams and work and team building. Support district goals with clean learning, work, and work environments. Support for community, both internal and external. Customer service at every level. Clean buildings are morale boosters. Develop leaders, team building, and relationship building. We are just starting a knowledge share program between head custodians. And next step is to include assistant heads and then our 8-hour custodians. The maintenance team plans and goals include to ensure each team member has appropriate tools and support to successfully complete daily work. Strive for the highest level of professionalism in each trade to provide support for each site's needs while maintaining district standards. Support every site by prioritizing work based on need for safe, appropriate operational buildings while considering the teaching and learning needs of our students. And develop teams with continual improvement through training and professional growth to maintain trade certificates and growth as a team. We look for ways to expand efficiency by balancing the team's capacity. Review which is more cost effective and efficient to produce greater level of output. And to implement strategies to overcome routine individual work by gaining cooperation through teamwork to accomplish more. We also want to leverage power of cooperation and collaboration to achieve more while improving the team's sense of support and avoid sense of isolation. We also want to bring the workloads to a more current level, review outstanding work orders to ensure we are finding strategies to keep work orders current with work needs. So thank you for the time and allowing me to present tonight. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Director Cook. I really appreciated hearing those details. I don't think we've had that level of detail before. And, you know, my father was a custodian. Well, he went to college, and I always think about our custodians at the end of the year when we're recognizing our retirees, especially. You know, the amount of work that they do for us. And I was thinking about, you know, the interactions in the classrooms or in our schools with our electricians, plumbers, custodians. Do they have any opportunity to work with CTE in advisement or mentorship programs, the groundskeepers? You know, I'm sure we have some related CTE programs, and I wonder how we are going to, you mentioned supporting them in trade programs and so forth. Are we involving them with our individual our students and our programs?
Not on a daily basis, but in past years, CTE has had a job kind of fair, And so they've invited us in. And so we've had many of our trades team who has, gone and shared. They do kind of a rotation throughout the day, and it's been at Kent Meridian. So the boiler technician got to share and speak with them, and an HVAC person got to speak with them. A painter came and showed them how to spackle and repair drywall and paint. So we have had those opportunities, but I would say we have not had extended opportunities on a daily basis to share in the CTA programs with our students.
I'm sorry, did you mention, was it the Public Works meeting with the city of Kent, or I know
No,
they have their Public Works program?
No, we haven't done anything with the city of Kent.
Okay.
Thank you for this presentation. That was really helpful. It would actually, it would be helpful if I know you have it written out, so it would be helpful if you could share the goals and things, because that was really helpful to hear, and it would be nice to see it in writing just to be able to ask. And you warmed my little heart when you said that you were cross training, when you were going earlier and talking about cross training, because I think that's so important. And but then you did mention with some of the trades that that isn't possible. So, but it does warm my heart to hear that you are working on cross training and, providing. So, you said that sometimes if there was a planned or unplanned absence, things go awry maybe, or by the wayside. So does that happen often, or is it with the trades?
I wouldn't say it happens often. Some of the problems we run into, or some of the situations we run into is, we only have one fire alarm technician. So the alarm technician and the electricians have some familiarity with the systems, but if that person is gone for some reason, for an extended period of time, it's impactful to the team. Right. We can always call in contractors and vendors. So we have several positions that are just one person. So, they have sick days, they have vacation days.
Yeah, of course.
So, it is impactful. So that's what I mentioned too. We're trying to grow our team so that we can have some dual coverage in some of those groups that, only have one. And we're also doing some cross training there. So like I mentioned, the fire alarm system and the security alarm system are very similar. So those are kind of easy to cross over. And our teams are divided. I don't know if you noticed, but our electrical plumbing team is one. And a lot of times in schools and in buildings, plumbing is part of the mechanical team. And we divided that up to kind of make each team even. So our plumber, our electrician lead, has had to learn a lot about plumbing because he's the lead of that team. And although we don't expect him to go in and design and do daily work, he needs to be able to step in emergencies if the plumber isn't there. So we have a lot of coverage and cross training there. And most of our tradespeople, they do more than just their one trade. So they have some familiarity with a lot of other things, which is very helpful.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, that focus on cross training is, I think, so important. And I appreciate hearing that has been a focus.
Thank you.
Mr. Cook, just wanted to echo on, I, have never had this thorough of a presentation on what you brought up today, and I greatly appreciate it. It's pretty amazing how many staff we have in these areas, and to learn about where all that placement is and all the things that are involved in the Kent School District. It's pretty amazing. So I do appreciate that. It gives me a kind of a general overall picture. And I thank you for making it so detailed tonight.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That was my goal, to kind of provide you guys with an overview of what our team does.
I want to echo what the other board directors have said. I appreciate your presentation. I like thorough presentations like this because it really lets me know more about what's going on in the district. There was one statistic that I was going to write down, but didn't write down at the very beginning. You talked about how many staff are in your department, but then you said OSPI recommends a certain amount to be in that. Can you state that again? Because I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, so there was a study in 2010 that OSPI did, and find my notes here, and they kind of described how they have a level in this study. There's one end is doing nothing and one end is not only doing preventative maintenance and cleaning, but replacing things before they fail. And so somewhere on that spectrum, you have to decide where you want to be. And they have a rubric based on the size of your students, to kind of what each team should be. And for us, that would have been, it's around 300 custodians and about 127 maintenance people. Now that's just the rubric based on the study. We probably wouldn't need to be that high, but I just threw that in there to kind of show how much we do with the small team that we actually have. I'm very impressed with the work we do. We can always improve and we strive to do better. But I think we do a lot with what we have, and I really appreciate the team for that.
Oh, I was going to say that same thing. You said it better than I could have. And that's very amazing, the work that you do with the team of your size, but it also gives us kind of like a lens of like what it could be or what it should be. I always like to hear that too. So thank you for all your work, and thank you for this awesome presentation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, it's
Thank
just just one more thing is at WASTA conference when I last went in person, one of the things that came up that students noticed the most after their teachers and things is the building. And, a lot of times the building and how the way the building is shows the students feel respected or welcomed based on the building. And so again, the work is impactful. And so I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Gordon. And yeah, he definitely shared a lot of information. We'll be sure, Director Bettinger, to get you, all of our board, the detailed information, important for us to really know. And also just a quick shout out again to our team. As you may have known, and I know Director Benno most recently joining us, that team has been rebuilt over the last couple of years. And so we were working with actually even less. And so, again, just can't say enough about the great work they're doing. Without further ado, I'd like to now turn it over to Mr. Buzzard.
Thank you, Israel. Vice President Bettinger and members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Santello. It's my pleasure to be here in support of our district for all things capital projects and planning. Let me share my screen. Am I up? Okay, thank you. So yes, a capital planning, capital projects update, which also includes capital planning. Again, it's my honor to be here tonight as the Director of Capital Planning and Facilities to support everything that we do here in the district. We have a few items that we'll go over today, and our overview will be organizational. We'll do some staffing compared. We'll look into the capital bond projects, our levy projects. Did want to get into the procurement process. We talked about change orders, next steps, and some questions at the end. Let's get started. So again, as you can see here, with approximately $475 million in bonds and levies to total to date, we do this in an office of myself and 5 other people, currently with one project planner, 2 project specialists, and this is our new capital small works planner, which was just enveloped this year by me and the team, kind of putting together what a planner does and what a specialist does in data control, and what a planner does or a planner manager does out in the field. We've combined that so we can have that person to run a good bit of our small works projects in the future, and I'll get more to that later. So here's, as Mr. Cook had done some staffing comparisons, I did the same thing except for OSPI. Clint Marsh of Marsh & Associates put together a very compelling report last year about all the school districts and how many people actually work in their capital projects or capital planning teams. As you can see in the Kent School District, we have 6, which we will be down 1 in December. Linnell Mooney is going to be resigning from being a project specialist. She's been here for about 15 years. She's going to be off to be a teacher, and I hope the Kent School District picks her up. So we'll be back to 5 again. Puyallup School District has 11, and they have about the same amount of bonds money. And then you also have Lake Washington with 2. And I know you're going to come back with some questions with this, so I'm going to just real quick let you know. Lake Washington puts all of their money into the project. So they actually have to hire a construction manager for every project that they do. They do not manage projects individually. So that's one reason. And then Puyallup, they have multiple project planners, multiple project managers, and they do everything in-house. They don't hire anybody outsourced, third party. Let's jump into our bonds. We still have a 2006 bond that we're actually still running. We have 3 actual projects that are still on there. We have the central admin power gates. And these, Tim Kovich with Safety Service, who you just saw earlier, he and I have been working on a finalized plan to get the campus, the east gate actually powered up as well as the west gate, so we could secure the campus a little bit more. And then the district-wide remaining access control projects, these have been through multiple stages, multiple phases. The dollars that we've spent have been used simultaneously by working with safety services and in an effort to go to schools, figure out which doors we need access control in, which areas can we put an extra key in, what do we need to do better management of our exits and entrance. Again, safety was the #1 thing in the A4LE conference 2 years ago. Safety in schools was #1. So we want to make sure that we keep doing that. And then Horizon Elementary, it was on the 2006 bond for the parking lot. It did not have enough in its funding. So it got added back into the 2016 bond, and we'll be finishing that one this year. So 2016 bond recap, as everybody knows, in 2016, voter approved $252 million. It's 102 individual projects, but some of those projects can be broken out. Like, for instance, Kent Meridian had tennis courts and field projects. So that can actually be 2 projects. So the number of projects can sometimes fluctuate, but 102 is the actual number of line items that the voters approved. Again, in 2012, the bond was pulled before it was out. It did pass in 16, and we've been feverishly executing our duties here in the capital planning and capital projects team to design, build, and turn over projects to the school so that the children, staff, and community can be in it. Everybody knows about the cost of materials. That's going to be spoken quite often in my presentation tonight. There's, over the last few years, there have been very few tradespeople joining the trades. That's another hit to our ability to be able to keep things in budget sometimes because things are actually more expensive when you have to bring other people in and materials are rising. And then we do not have the total COVID-19 costs yet. We haven't even seen what those costs could or could not be related to COVID. And then just a few of our promises made, promises kept. Covington Elementary School, New Valley Academy, multi-purpose rooms, and some fire alarm projects or major field renovations. So in our new schools, as I just spoke, Covington opened up in 18. We have a New Valley Elementary School, and we have the Academy. So New Valley is now River Ridge, and Academy is now the Kent Laboratory Academy. In River Ridge, we started construction on both projects around the same time. We had a stop work order up at the Academy site for a permit issue that was caused by a CUP issue, conditional use permit, but the site went back into full progress 35 days later, and we've been working diligently to make up those 35 days. The building it will be tracking on time. We'll still have a little bit of site work to do. We'll probably be finishing up landscaping landscaping about the time the building's ready for occupancy and opening. The academy, on the other hand, we have not had very many issues with that building as far as complexities of any permitting or stoppages. Everybody's been by that building. It's a beautiful building on the corner of 108th and 208th. You can't miss it if you drive by, and it's definitely in the final stages of being done. And I can't wait to take the board, Dr. Watts, and anybody else who wants to walk through these buildings. They're absolutely beautiful. So, multi-purpose rooms. 9 multi-purpose rooms are on the bond. All of them are done except for 3: Lake Young, Springbrook, and Meridian. I gave some data points out earlier, is that 4 of them are the same: Grass Lake, Cedar Valley, Sue's Creek, and Springbrook. They're the same design. We had the same designer on those because the buildings are the same. It's the same. They were placed in the same place of the building plat. Different site work, but in the same place up against the building. So we were able to save some costs there for design. And then Lake Young's and Pine Tree, of course, are 60s, 1965, 1966 builds. So they were the same. And then Fairwood and Park Orchard were a little, in Meridian, were different buildings altogether due to their age and the placement of where the multipurpose room was going to go. And these buildings, these spaces bring a huge collaboration space for staff, community. I haven't heard one negative comment from a principal about gaining 4,800 to 5,000 square foot in a building for use. Field projects, I did have a little bit of comments on this. So school field projects across the board have been discussed over the last year between Brian Smith and I, our Director of Athletics and Activities. Brian and I have been coming up with, what can we do with our fields? How can we better enhance our fields and use the dollars better that we have? Unfortunately, at this point in time, the bond only had all natural grass turf to be replaced. That was in the voter approved bond. So Brian and I are like, okay, middle schools can stay natural turf for today because, again, they're practice fields, they're holding up very well. We did put our first renovation of turf in the Kent Meridian baseball field, and then COVID hit. So we haven't had a chance to really utilize that field, but Brian, team, and myself are very excited to know that that field is going to get use even in inclement weather. And then the planning on this came through the board approval in 2018 to actually turn that grass field into a turf field. And we think that that is the way to go. And we will be coming to the board later on with a plan to talk about that going forward. Again, a short study was done by our facilities and grounds team 2 years ago. And then we've talked to other districts. It's the cost of watering it and taking care of it versus having turf and replacing it every 15 to 18 years. There is a cost savings, but there also is a cost in replacing the turf as well. HVAC projects continue to go through the district. As you can see, most of these are completed, especially for the elementaries. The Kent Ridge, Meeker, and Sue's Creek, these will start in another couple of years as we get done to design for them. Some of them are HVAC, some of them are just control projects because our controls are on a building management system. So what we want to do is just make sure that we can talk to those building management systems so we don't have to send a technician. As you saw, Gordon had 6 people in his HVAC team that covers around 3 million square foot plus in the district. So we want to make sure that they could pop a computer up anywhere they're at and look and see what's going on. So that's kind of what our control projects do. Fire alarm and sprinkler. These are going very well. We were able to procure the last 4 in our bond with Honeywell through our cooperative, and very happy to see that we were able to negotiate some of these prices down from what past projects had been, so that we can get these next 4 projects done. And then now we've got a good partner on the other side to provide awesome fire alarm systems and sprinkler projects. Again, this is all part of life safety, something that has to be done, and we need to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. Individual school projects, again, at the end of the bond, there's a whole list of individual school projects that you'll see. Some of the big ones that we're working on right now is there's been a 3-year project for Promethean boards. Technology has been huge. And I'm happy to say that come summer, Dr. Watson board, we will have installed over 1,800 Promethean boards, over 1,800 Top Cats, the audio enhanced or the audio visual, the audio aid in the rooms. This is massive. This is something that, it started 3 years ago and we're coming to an end. So we're very happy to be able to turn that over to the district for everybody to get on board with our new technology and being able to use it in the classrooms. Cedar Heights, again, this is a classroom science conversion. And we've actually talked about this, maybe putting into place some STEM. So we're talking about that one as well. And then Kentwood Performing Arts Center, PAC, as well. We're excited to get through that project and again, keep going on and on with that, what we need to do the right thing and make things well and everybody's happy. The health room remodel was going to happen next summer. We're trying to make sure that see if that can happen this summer. I know it's been a long time for them, but what we're trying to do is with the COVID restrictions, not being able to get in the building, we finally found a remodeling company. So I think we'll be able to do it. And then Pine Tree, insufficient budget. That'll be another topic we can talk about here in the next couple of slides. And then the Scenic Hill. This is our kind of our last big hoorah in the bond. This is the new library multimedia center that will actually be built in the center courtyard of the school. So that will take some planning. So we'll see how that one goes. I'm happy to do it. Levy projects, as you can see, we have a total of 307. We've completed 118 to date, 49 in progress. So as you can see, most all schools, portable siding, paint, roofs, ramp replacements, these are all completed. A lot of paintings, some HVAC controls, Frenchfield, and got a all new lighting, if nobody knew that. So all new sports lighting in the field last year. We renovated the ticket booths, and this year we're getting ready to design and start. We're going to put all new bleachers in there, grandstand seating, paint the entire complex, renovate the bathrooms. A lot of cool things coming up in the levy projects for Frenchfield and all over the district, by the way. Flooring is a continual operational need for us in the district. We do have carpets in the district that are pushing 25 to 28 years old. But the power bond that we use from Shaw is bulletproof. It has a rubber backing on it, no water seeps through it. And the carpet does last with good cleaning and maintenance and caring from our custodians. And then we have our boiler replacements and a lot of interior painting coming up. Procurement process. Wanted to jump into this one a little bit to make sure that we understand where we are in the capital planning and in the district across. So as you will see here in this slide, RCW 28A 335-190, it clearly states that it allows us single source procurement up to $75,000 for equipment, $100,000 per public work, and then anything that is that has an estimate of it from 100 to 350 can be done through our small works roster. The Kent School District used to carry our own roster. We used to maintain our own small works roster. Now what we've done, I reached out and said, hey, there's a program out that does this. It costs us $1,200 a year. Capital planning pays for it, and now we get to use hundreds of thousands of vendors that are already vetted through the small works roster, through the small works program, that we can actually reach out to get 5 bids, qualified bids, and go that way when we don't have to advertise. So there's no publicly advertisement, saves us money on coordination, saves us money for even plans and specs. We can come up with our own plans and specs as well. And it just is it's a really good way to do anything small projects. And then anything over $100,000 has to be competitively bid if you don't go out through small works. So you would have to competitively bid anything $100,000 or over with at least a competitive bid, and then we are low bid district. Now RCW 28A 320080, that is our cooperative. So the Kent is it King County Directors Association, KCDA. So what that is that's a cooperative that was put together for anybody to be able to come through and say, okay, here's a bunch of vendors, they match their support. You give us, come to them, they can negotiate price, and we can get projects run through them without the competitive bidding process as well. Change orders. So when we have a change in the work, if somebody says, okay, we have a change in the work, we issued a contract, now we have a change in the work. So we as the owner have the architect issue the CCD, or the construction change directive. That keeps the contractor on task. The contractor has to do the work without even coming up with a price yet. They have 14 days legally to come up with a price. If they can't do it in 14 days, they have to give us notice, and then they have 30 days to come back with the price. If they don't give us a price within 30 days, our AIA contract with the contractor states that we don't have to pay it. Now, the Kent School District has never done that, and as long as I'm here, I will never do that, because I believe in fairness. We don't go through that a lot, but we've had a couple of instances where that happens. So the CCD ends up getting turned into a COP, a change order proposal, back to us. We review it. Everybody reviews it on the architect engineer side, and then it gets placed on a change order. And then all of those COPs come to a single change order with the allotted COPs to the board for approval. So what are our next steps? So my next step and our team's next step is to review remaining bond projects versus current needs. We've had changes in planning. I've had principals even today reach out to me and say, hey, Dave, I've got a project that really doesn't meet our current needs. Is there something that we can do? Can we take these funds and reallocate them? So I am in a deep dive with some people and some of our projects to be able to look into that, to see what we can do about possibly changing some of our projects that were voted in the 2016 bond, but we may believe that it could be used differently in our current needs. We need to plan for a full bond measure in 23-24. We're really in need of a master facilities plan, which I'm working on an RFP right now to push up to the board, see if we can do that. Again, my plan is also to reduce the number of portables across the district. I mean, 172 portables in the district. We should really think that through and figure out what our students are working in, not only in just temporary housing in a portable, but how long of those. I mean, Gordon Cook gave some of those dates away. I think there were 75 of them, 74 of them were built in 90. So we need to look at that. Prioritize levy projects on reallocate due to changing needs of priority. Just what I said earlier, and then continue to reach out to all local state agencies to keep bringing those collaborations and those meetings to point, so we know what's going on. And then again, you know, our goal here in capital projects planning is to always continue to provide KSD, providing flexible, innovative, safe spaces for our students. And with that, I'll turn it over to some questions.
The board. Questions? Yes.
I have a question on the levy projects. It mentioned that the 2018 levy projects will go to around 2026. So I'm just wondering, when we start planning for that next year, how are we going to be able to discuss, you know, the priorities that are coming up? And if we see that it's going to go until 2026, you know, how do we rent that up? Or shouldn't we rent that up?
So the 2016 bond is going to come to an end in 2025. So that's the bond. So that's on the bond project. So we would definitely want to go out for another bond for big projects, because a bond, we would want to look at what do we want to do as a district? A master facilities plan with our capital facilities plans. What do we want to do as a district? Do we want to start replacing some schools? Yes. Do we need to maybe build a couple of schools? Sure. Are we going to talk about getting rid of our portables? Absolutely. It's going to be a discussion. We need to do that. I know Director Benno is all about that, and I'm happy to see that head shaking. So there's a lot of things that we need to discuss as a team, as a community. There's a lot of things that we need to discuss. So those are coming. So that's the bond. Now the levy are all the repair and maintenance that had not been done over the years. Director Van-Lawson, that's what the levy was. The levy were all the things that didn't get put on the bond that we really needed to do. So that's going to taper out in about 2026. So if we go out for a bond in 2022-3, and we pass a bond that would go create, let's say it passes in 24. I'm being very hypothetical and I'm being very ambitious, I think, here, but I'm going to stay positive. If it passes in 24 and we get another 5 to 6 years of bonds, building, beautiful schools and things that we need in this district desperately, then we'll go. Then the levy will come in behind that one. So again, bond, levy, bond, levy, bond, levy. But to answer your question, student voice, staff voice, community voice. There will be a capital bond planning task force. It won't be a community committee. We'll change the name of that a little bit. I like that task force because I think that brings in staff. It brings in all the voices here in the Kent School District to talk about that. We in capital planning and maintenance and facilities that Gordon have, we're going to issue a first run of plans of what we see of the needs of the district. From there, we'll put that out to the community. We'll have a community discussion. We'll have an executive cabinet discussion. We're definitely going to have a board discussion because I think that's the way we do it. And we all agree.
Okay, I can ask this later, but I think my concern is more for the levies coming up than so for the bonds, because that's going to be in a while. 24, you said the planning is 23, 24 for the bond. So I'm just worried about these projects running until 2026, and how are we going to expedite some of that?
I'm sorry. So on the levy, we cannot expedite them because the levy is off of taxpayer taxes that are being collected. Bond sales are one thing, but tax collection, we only have a certain amount of dollars that we can spend. I know Mr. Rick's on the call. I'm sure he can explain that as well too, or we can get you that data, Director Van-Dawson. Without a doubt. But I can tell you that when the levy goes through and the bond overlaps and then the levy comes back around again, it's been planned that way for 6 years, and we have it planned out that way for 6 years.
Okay.
So just doing a time check, this meeting goes till 7:30, correct? Can we add time for questions at our next board meeting, add an agenda item for more questions?
We do have 2 minutes. We can ask any question. We can certainly add questions to a follow-up meeting. Absolutely.
So my question is, there's certain things like Promethean boards. I've heard that there have been some problems with those installations. So my question on that is, who's doing checkups and follow-ups on those? I have 2 concerns regarding ADA. And I know I did some research and I understand that the age of some of our buildings doesn't require us to meet ADA requirements, but the Lake Young's Health Room is one that's been planned for a long time. And then also the foyer to right outside the gymnasium in Kentridge has no ADA accessible restrooms. They go downstairs. And I thought that was on the bond as well. I thought I saw that on the bond. So that is what I'm going to want an answer to. And also, you know, I know in our capital levy, one of the most important things to our citizens, like a recent survey also, is the arts. And I see a lot of money spent on the fields and things like that, and not a ton of money spent on the arts. So I'd like just an overview of that. And just as a side note, one of your first slides says that we have 28,000 students, but our April financial statement says we have 24K, and even the enrollment projection for next year's capital facilities update is 25K. So I don't know who gave you that information, but we don't have 28,000 students. We have about 24. But yeah, so Promethean, who's doing follow-up? Like the Promethean boards, I've heard some of them weren't installed correctly. ADA accommodations for the Lake Young's health room, and then the foyer for the gymnasium at Kent Ridge, with those, the only nearby restrooms are downstairs. And also the capital levy, all the money going to fields and things like that, when the arts has been one of the main things people have been asking for. So that's what I would like.
On your number, I can answer those quickly if you'd like, Dr. Watson.
That's
Yeah.
please.
If everyone's free to stay.
It's okay. So on the Promethean boards, our team through DARTS and through Capital are going back if there are any issues at all. The DARTS team and Capital got together 3 years ago and determined two standard heights for mounting the Promethean boards. One was 36, the other one was 28. So those were the two standardized heights that we've been installing those in, and we've installed those at those heights. If a request comes in for an individual teacher staff member that needs to move that, then that comes through facilities, and we gauge that for what the need is, because the DARTS team came up with those two items, those two heights, as a standard. Because if we don't standardize our classrooms, the teacher in that classroom may not be in that classroom next year. They may not be in that school next year. They may not even be in the district next year. So that's why we have a standard on those. The 88 Lake Young's health room. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can bring us to closure on that, and we'll adjourn. We'll have an opportunity to gather additional questions and make sure that all of our board members have an opportunity to get their questions answered, just in a different format. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
You can go ahead and finish your. Please, ADA. Thank you.
So on the ADA for the Lake Young's health room, that is actually correct. That is the bathroom for that. It's just the bathroom. It's not the door to the health room itself. And it is correct. We totally agree. It was on the 2012 planning. It got pulled. It was on the 2016. It was supposed to be done last year. Due to COVID restrictions, we couldn't do it. We have a budget issue with that project as well too, but we're going to work through that because it is needed. And the Kent Ridge foyer is definitely getting ADA bathrooms.
When?
When the project goes through. It's in design right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Vice President Bettinger. And I would say, given our time, we certainly want to be able to respond in an appropriate manner. I would ask just for clarification that may be an opportunity for you to provide that in a different format. I can reach out to you or Karen or Ms. Halle or Ms. Zantello. You mentioned the Promethean board, and maybe not for this moment, but if you can provide some more specificity into what it is that you were actually hearing about the concerns that were brought to your attention, that would be helpful for us so that we can know how best to respond. Thank you for that.
And then other board directors that have questions, are we going to add some time to tomorrow night's meeting? We could add it to the agenda and the agenda review, right?
That is an option. So the board is here. The pleasure of the board would offer other board members an opportunity to weigh in. It is 7:33. I want to honor that time as well, but this is an opportunity for a board to share. Members of the board?
I'm okay with that because I have a couple asks. So I'm okay with a couple of minutes extra time on the agenda for that.
Okay.
Me as well.
I have just a couple quick questions that I might want to put in there, so I'd appreciate that.
I'm here to answer any and all of your questions.
Yeah, so I think tomorrow night adding to the agenda.
That's what I'm hearing. And also, Director Venkatasalam is additional. Okay.
Great.
There's a consensus.
Okay.
And
And
Thank
it
you
is
so very
now
much. Yes. Vice President Bender.
7:34 p.m. And I want to thank everyone for presenting tonight and everyone that has compiled all this information. It's a lot, but it's very helpful and I appreciate a lot because it's thorough. So yes, so we'll look forward to a further conversation tomorrow. Thank you everyone who's watching. Everyone at home, have a great and safe evening. Good night.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.